17-year-old Temitop Shegun enjoys a game of football with some of her friends here on the outskirts of Abuja. Shegun was born HIV positive and is one out of 2 million adolescents aged between 10 and 19 living with the disease around the world. Shegun says managing the virus is routine to her daily life.
I take my drugs timely every day. I set alarm on phone so that I remind myself, because anywhere I go, I take my drugs along. Whenever I'm with friends, I gist. Then before my time of my drugs, then I will go home.
Temitop Shegun belongs to a local HIV/AIDS youth support group, which meets regularly. And although the United Nations AIDS body reports HIV/AIDS as the leading cause of death among adolescents in Africa, HIV educators and activists hope centers like this will engage young people in the fight against the disease. Experts say access to treatment and counseling for a younger demographic of persons living with HIV is often challenging, and youth centers like this make it easier for young people to adhere to treatment. Campaigners at the center are working to reduce infections in adolescents across the country by 75% over the next 5 years by working with primary health care centers in battling stigma associated with the virus.
Most of the treatment centers are full of adults, So, but if we have specific places for youth-friendly center, for maybe treatment centers that are youth-friendly, it will go a long way, because in that place we can actually do a lot in terms of counseling.
The Nigerian government reports overall HIV infection rates in the country have dropped from 5 to 3% over the last 5 years. However, activists say more needs to be done to end adolescent AIDS.
And this is why we are hoping that the government would maybe make a treatment center friendly, where they can come as like a support group for them, and then continue activities of counseling, ongoing counseling, follow-up. It will really help a lot. But for now, we don't have any activities on that.
In a country with over 3 million reported cases of HIV infections, the challenge is how to keep them as healthy as possible, and future generations cannot afford to take their eye off the ball. Sophia Adengo for CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, let's discuss the situation across Africa further now with James Kamau. He's a healthcare activist and CEO of the Kenya Treatment Access Movement. He's joining me here in our studios. Thank you for joining us on the program. Now, let's start off with the prevalence rate in Africa, because it is quite high. And as you mentioned earlier in our discussion, that a large segment of HIV global prevalence is in Africa. So the question of discrimination, how serious is the problem of discrimination, though, for people living with HIV/AIDS in Africa?
Thank you very much, Beatrice. It is extremely serious. It is very, very serious. The stigma and discrimination involved in HIV is extremely serious. I'll give you a very good example. I've just come back from India on what you call the Global TB Vaccine Initiative. Incidentally, everybody who has TB is associated with HIV. But the fact of the matter is, out of the 10.8 million people who are TB, live TB, known, only 400,000 are correlated or co-infected with TB. But the mere fact of the TB is extremely high.
All right. If you look at the whole question of social stigma, particularly in Africa, dealing with HIV and AIDS, how do you go about eliminating that social stigma?
To eliminate that social stigma, one of the things we need to do is get back to the ground and stop isolating people living with HIV and putting them in a cocoon together. This is a problem. We need to understand that HIV is not just for those infected, it is also for those affected. And they both need to sort out, different measures and issues need to be put into place. So what we need to do is a lot of treatment knowledge so that people can understand, one, how to treat the people who are HIV, and it will also increase in stopping new infections and how to mitigate about it and to remove the social stigma. And incidentally, when we talk about the social stigma, it could be, there are very many forms of stigma. There's self-stigma, there are those who don't come out. There's societal stigma,
Right.
where people point fingers at you, and there's stigma at healthcare provider. So that's the combination of the social stigma.
But there's a key question here about integrating those people living with HIV. How, do you have any examples that you can share with us as to how some African communities have assisted those with HIV be integrated into the community?
They have integrated, especially depending on where you are in African countries. Like in Kenya, you find that in the different counties, they have people living with HIV within the county system to be able to help. At the continental level, we have the AU. There is a complete division where the civil society and people living with or affected sit there to go on.
All right, James Kamau, thank you very much for your insights. We'll leave it there.